Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for inviting me to this important conference this morning. My name is Molly Melching. I have lived and worked in Senegal for now 40 years. In fact, this is my 40th anniversary, and I'm very happy to take you back to Senegal with me this morning, to a village which represents the many thousands of villages where Tostan has worked in 8 African countries over the past 25 years. This village, when we went there 15 years ago, had no water, no electricity, no school, no health services. And this is really the type of village that Tostan goes to in the remotest of areas in those countries where we work. I want to introduce you to a woman who lives in that village. Her name is Mariam Bamba. She never went to formal school. She went through the practices of female genital cutting and child marriage when she was just 14 and had her first child at age 15. And she never before had participated in any of the important decisions that the community was making that affect her life and the life of other women in the community. But to really understand Mariam, we really have to look at her community and all of those in her community, because the decision to marry, this decision to be cut at an early age, did not come from her. It came from all of the other people in her community, and beyond that, it came from the social network, the other communities where Mariam has relatives, where her ethnic group, which came from Mali originally, and where she still has relatives. Those practices and those behaviors were not determined at all by her or even her village, but by this entire social network going all the way back to Mali. And it is really important also to understand what the values of Mariam and her community are. I have put these words in Wolof because I speak Wolof and I don't speak Bambara, but the words are similar in all of the African languages in which we work. There are 22. We work in 22 different languages. And those values are the family and, of course, the extended family, including the entire social network. Jam, peace and security. Tegen is a very important word, meaning that one fulfills the role of being in the group, understanding what that role means, that you reinforce the unity and the understanding within the group. And jom, which is very important also, that you receive respect and the dignity you deserve, and you also give the respect and dignity that you deserve, that others deserve. Now, Mariam went through the Tostan program 15 years ago. You may ask what the Tostan program is, and I will just briefly tell you that it involves 2 classes of both adults, 1 class of adults and 1 class of adolescents, and both classes are mixed. And outside of the class, there is a community management committee established, which coordinates all the activities of the class and brings the information and the activities of the class to the community, and then later to the extended community of families and relatives living in other villages. The first year of the program is called the Kobi. It's a Mandenka word that means to prepare the soil for planting. And this involves 98 2-hour sessions where people start by visioning what future they want as a community for 5, 10 years from today. They once have established that, and most often they talk about having peace, very important again to them, education, health, well-being in general for the entire family and extended family. And then we introduce the notions of democracy, human rights, and responsibilities. This lasts for 3 months. But we found that it was so important when we introduced this human rights module in 1996, way back in 1996. We saw the most amazing things happening. I always say it was like a revolution at the grassroots level. We had never seen, after 8 years of doing educational work in communities, we had never seen what we saw when we introduced this human rights and responsibilities module. We also then work on problem solving, looking at if they want a certain type of community, what are the obstacles to achieving that community, and then go more specifically into hygiene and health. And all along, these sessions build self-confidence, particularly of the girls and women who are in the program. And I try to explain this in a way that people understand. They always say, well, how do you really get people at the grassroots level to understand these concepts of human rights? And we do so by, as I showed before, introducing, first of all, the drawings and what you see in this drawing, and whether or not you think these are important, and if these are principles, when you compare them to your community values, and very importantly, to your religious texts, the sacred texts, do they correspond, reinforce those values and those religious beliefs? And in general, we found that people agree they do. So they are no longer just Western human rights. They are universal values that connect them to the larger world. And they're very excited about this when they learn about this. And this leads them then to look at different practices that are going on in the community and deciding which of the current practices actually help to reinforce that well-being, that health, the peace that they themselves have defined as being very important to their future. And then decisions are made. Decisions whether those practices should continue or whether they should be abandoned, and whether perhaps new practices should be adopted in the community. We do this through oral tradition. The whole first year of the COBE 1 is conversation. It's exchanging ideas. And we did this because we found that if you just do literacy that first year, a lot of the important leaders, the village chief, the religious leaders, often drop out because they're embarrassed at having to sit and try to read and write letters and words that they have never had to do before, and they're a little bit embarrassed in front of others when they don't master those so easily. But in conversation, they're very good, and they participate and are engaged throughout the whole year where this dialogue occurs. But also, the classes are fun. I think this is really important. Every session is written out, pages of activities that are done in order to allow for people to create their own theaters about the problems in the community and the solutions that they themselves find to these problems. There is the songs on democracy wherever you go in Senegal and in the other 6 countries where we work in West Africa currently. You will hear songs on democracy, songs on human rights, and they dance and feel absolutely at home and comfortable in this environment, which is a class, but it's always in a circle, which was the traditional way of people coming together to discuss problems and decisions in the community. The third and fourth year of the program is called the Audi. The Audi is a Fulani word, or a Pular word, meaning to plant the seed. And there they learn literacy, math, they do microcredit, management skills, and small project implementation. We found that introducing SMS texting not only helped to improve the literacy skills of all of our participants, but it also allowed for new democratic practices, monitoring elections and finding out whether the health worker was actually at the health center and whether or not they could get a good price at the marketplace. So this has been a huge innovation in our program in the past 3 years that has led to people being even more motivated to learn to read and write. The strategy of Tostan, the one we have used to particularly change, or that the villagers have used to change deeply entrenched social norms, is one that was taught to me by Demba Jawara. I always say he is a doctorate in wisdom and social transformation. He comes from the village. He's an imam, a village chief. He's never been to school. But he showed me the way when one of the communities in which we worked stood up and abandoned female genital cutting and did this alone without their relatives being aware, and had a great deal of difficulty when they did so. They were insulted, they were yelled at, spit upon. It was a very difficult time for them. But Dimba explained that in African society, if you want to make change, you must use a different strategy. And that starts for us, the strategy that would reach out to all the neighboring communities and all the way back to Mali, where you have relatives. So it involves what we've been talking about this morning, inclusion, including everybody in these decisions. All of the men and women, all of the leaders, everyone has to be involved, come together, come to consensus, and decide that this is what will bring health and well-being and a better future for our entire community. And this starts with Tostan, with our Empowering Education program, with the knowledge of democracy and human rights. And this new information, which is discussed in class and among the participants, they then reach out individually. Each one adopts another learner every single day. On Monday they learn, on Tuesday they go back and may have a co-wife or a sister or family members, and they actually talk to them about what they've learned in class. The class then shares with the village. The other members has wonderful, very animated sessions on democracy and human rights in the village center, doing theaters on child marriage, FGC, violence against women, the importance of birth registration and voter rights. They then hold inter-village meetings. This represents a meeting of over 50 communities who came together to discuss what I said, a community, a family, an extended family coming together to decide to change a deeply entrenched practice that they now want to abandon, including them so that they can all do it together in unity, in peace, and harmony. And then you may have heard of the public declarations for the abandonment of female genital cutting and child marriage. And there have been over 7,000 of those declarations held in the 8 African countries where we've worked, including Somalia, Djibouti. We had a very large declaration in Djibouti, and Senegal, of course, Mauritania, Mali, Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, Guinea. These declarations are critical because what happens is that people come, they go back to their communities. In the group there, you see these red hats. Those people are from Guinea. They came up and they saw how people were abandoning female genital cutting and child marriage, and they said, these are the same ethnic groups as ours. And they went back, and a year later, they held their own public declaration for abandoning that practice. And so what we're saying is that we know that it's not 100% who abandon during these declarations, but it is building critical mass of people who see that change is happening, and that it is positive, and it's for, again, health and well-being. They're promoting something. We never talk at Tostan about fighting against harmful practices because fighting brings resistance. If I come up to you and say, you know, I'm going to fight against what you here in Norway are doing, you would be, I think, not too happy. But if we share and exchange and we promote positive practices for us all, I think people then are open to listening. And certainly in the communities where we work, and with the religious leaders particularly, talking about achieving positive goals actually opens doors to dialogue, to people discussing, and listening to what we have to say, and has led to many positive results. And the results of the program are many. I don't have time to go into them today, but they are in the domains of education, of health, environment, and of economic growth through all the income-generating activities that the participants have been able to implement. They have really increased their community funds as well as individual funds in the community. But all of that is based on this foundation of good governance, of their democracy and human rights learning, just to give a few examples of the results, is that almost every community management committee has now become a community-based organization. The community members are all participants in the decision-making instances of the community now, including the youth. There is new transparency in the way things are run, systematic birth registration, almost 100% voter registration and participation in elections, and the local authorities are thrilled with our program because taxes are being paid for the first time. However, on the other side, people now understand what their taxes are for. They really did not understand this before. And so they are now advocating and lobbying for government services, which they never had before. Whoops. So I want to go back to Mariam, which you saw in the beginning. She is currently the community, in the community management committee. She is the coordinator, but she also is a solar engineer. We have a partnership with the Barefoot College in India. She went to Tolonia and she came back and is training others, and she installed 50 solar units in her village and another village where she told me, I went to the village next door and they have a church, they're Catholics. But we learned everyone has the right to be free from all forms of discrimination. So I wanted them to see that if we had the solar unit in our community, we had to do that in their church also so that they could benefit from lighting in their church. They also built this school. Now this is a rudimentary school. It's not like the schools that you're used to, but it's their own. They built in this stuff. They needed a middle school because the girls had to walk 14 kilometers to get to the next school that was available. They decided to do this. They went to the government, and they lobbied for teachers. They have 5 teachers in this school, and there are 132 students in this school. They are now planning on building a better school. Other communities have already started to give materials so that that can be done. And Ule, who's from Sujan, from Mariam's village, she is the first woman to have been elected to the rural council in her zone. And this is exciting. A group of villagers, Mariam is in the middle, who went to over 200 communities to convince others to end female genital cutting and child marriage, their relatives, members of their ethnic group, talking to them about why they abandoned this practice and how they wanted them to join in. And this led to those relatives abandoning the practices of FGC and child marriage also. So I'd just like to leave you with 3 major points that we believe that the human rights-based holistic education program in national languages, which we have implemented over the last, since 1996, is truly a way to achieve human rights at the grassroots level. But using a social norm strategy, one that is really based on African sociology, the way things are done in Africa, where this outreach to others of the same group to come to consensus around these decisions is so critical. And then we've also used this approach, and I always say this is probably the most important, is a respectful approach, coming to people, understanding that they are abandoning these practices, not because we think it's best, but because we understand they did it out of love, and now they are going to abandon out of love, of caring, and again, out of love for the people with whom we're working. Now, this is Mariam's granddaughter, Hadi. She was not cut, and she is going to school, and she'll continue to go to school. She now sees her grandmother up on the roof repairing solar units. She has a different future ahead of her. And this happened in just 1 generation. And I want to take this opportunity to thank Norad and the people of Norway for having supported Tostan to reach even more. Hundreds and thousands more people have been reached at the grassroots level with this type of education, which we believe can truly change the face of Africa in the years to come. Thank you very much.